And in a moment, I'm going to be joined by Kelly Jane Torrance, who is going to tell us all about the Israel-hating Muslim socialist candidate for mayor in New York City, who is actually in with a chance. Has the old hometown lost its mind? We'll find out soon enough. But first, the reverberations from last week's No Kings marches are still vibrating around the place, and I have been trying to figure out what about this movement really bothers me so much. And then it struck me. All the lefties out there protesting in the No Kings movement, well, they aren't against kings. They're simply mad that the so-called king isn't one of their own. Because I was thinking about this. Who can forget how when Barack Obama was president, the left wanted to turn him into a wise, benevolent philosopher king and imbue him with behaviors that had someone suggested them for Donald Trump? Well, they would have screamed that this was all democracy-dodging tyranny. Back in 2014, NPR, recently defunded by the House, enthused about Obama using just two tools to get his way. Not the Constitution and the legislature, but a pen and a phone. Then in 2012, CNN said that liberals, yes, the left, wanted Obama to be a king, not a president. Some went further. Newsweek equated Obama's presidency to the second coming of Christ. Hey, what's a little sacrilege between friends? And of course, there were all these images designed to make Obama look like a long-suffering saint, something out of an Eastern Orthodox icon, I suppose. So, honestly, guys, I say this to you on the left, if you're going to go out and protest Trump acting like a king, or at least a king whose every move is thwarted by 700 district court judges, maybe instead you should look in the mirror. Well, joining me now is the New York Post editor-at-large, Kelly Jane Torrance. Kelly, thanks for joining me. I just played a little while ago in the show here some of the comments from Whoopi Goldberg, where she compared the United States to Iran and said, well, it was much of a muchness if you're a minority group. Now, I understand you have spoken to some Iranians in New York about what they thought of the comments. I can't imagine that they were terribly impressed, but what did you find out?
Yeah, and it's always a pleasure to be here, James. They were actually quite outraged and offended. These are people who have, some of them have been in jail themselves. I published a piece at the New York Post just this afternoon from someone whose father was tortured in jail, and his family has been targeted since he left Iran because he speaks out against this evil regime. And the idea that America is as bad as Iran for black people, as Whoopi Goldberg said on The View, is just insane. And he kind of makes some good points. Iranians kind of wish they could have the kind of problems Americans complain of. Fear is everywhere. You're being watched at all times. Anything you say could be used against you. Even if you don't say something, they can just have trumped up charges. And of course, there's public hangings of political dissidents to send a message to the rest of the population: don't speak out. If Whoopi would like to really know what it's like in Iran, I'm happy to pay for a one-way ticket for her to check it out for herself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people here would help crowdfund that one there, Kelly. Now, I also want to talk about, too, because I flagged this earlier in the show, the intriguing and entertaining race currently going on in New York City, which, as you know, I'm personally quite invested in, over who's going to be the Democrat candidate for mayor. Now, Andrew Cuomo has a lead over controversial mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, but the fact that he has done so well and engaged so much celebrity support, he has seemingly questioned Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, and yet, or perhaps actually not surprisingly, has also been drawing celebrity-studded crowds with the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all sorts of people on the left. It's been this weird sort of leftist populist movement. What is going on here? Who is this guy? And have New Yorkers lost their minds on the left that this person is even being spoken about as a serious potential candidate?
Well, I have to say, James, I feel like it's really only entertaining if you don't live in New York and are going to be stuck possibly being ruled over by one of these guys. No, but you're right, James. It is entertaining. And Zoran Mondani, here's a guy who really has hardly worked a day in his life. He's basically has 3 years of job experience. And part of that was as a rapper, where he made $1,000. Another was scoring some music for one of his mother's movies. His mother is Mira Nair, who's a director who I actually interviewed once when I was a movie critic. But he's really hardly worked a day in his life, and it's amazing. Bernie Sanders actually endorsed him for New York City mayor, and that's a senator from Vermont endorsing someone for New York City mayor. This doesn't happen that often. And the polls still show Andrew Cuomo ahead in the Democratic primary, but Mondani's been gaining on him. The last poll I saw, he was up 10 points from the one before that. So it is concerning. This guy, he has such policies as he wants the government, the city of New York, which, as you know, is not a very efficient operation. He wants them to run grocery stores in all 5 boroughs. This is kind of insane. You have, some grocery store owners saying, well, if he gets elected and does that, we're closing up shop. But really the best moment came this week. He was in an interview, refused to condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada, which of course is a call to kill Jews. And he was roundly, criticized for that, including by someone, some of his allies. And so he gave a tearful address to reporters saying it pains him to be called an anti-Semite. But that's exactly what the guy is. So,
Wow.
what? I think you're right, James. It is pretty entertaining.
Yeah, but we do know it's a serious point that what globalized the Intifada means. We saw that on the streets of Washington recently. We saw that in Boulder recently, 2 terrible tragedies there. But there's also some other, glimmers for hope here in the United States here. And I was very interested to see the Supreme Court this week upholding Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care, that's sex change, procedures, physical procedures for transgender minors, with the court voting 6-3 in favor of the ban. This is a hugely important landmark decision. What are the implications going to be for this nationally? Because it's just Tennessee, obviously, where the case came out, but it's gone to the federal Supreme Court. Does this mean that the whole trend of engaging in surgeries and things like that for under 18s who may be transgender, that may be coming to an end finally?
Well, let's hope so, James. It's, mutilating children before, they even have a chance to understand what's going on. It's just shameful. But this case was just about Tennessee, but there are 26 other states that have similar laws in place banning, any sort of transgender, they call it gender-affirming care, which is, it's newspeak for mutilation, really. But 26 other states also have these laws. And so this is a Supreme Court speaking. So it seems unlikely that any of those states, you couldn't be able to challenge those bans either. So it really has big implications beyond Tennessee. And, I've heard that they may have something in the One Big Beautiful Bill that would ban these sorts of procedures on minors nationally. But really, it's the states that matter, and they're the ones that really are going to be the ones setting legislation on it. So it's huge, and it really is a chance for hope. The United States is way behind on this. Other countries, the United Kingdom has seen the, how terrible this is and the damage it's done to children, and has stepped back long before the United States. So, we're really catching up here, and it's really about time. I've talked to a number of people who were, confused kids, and were basically pushed into it by doctors or therapists, and came to regret it. And it's lifelong, changes their life when they go through some of these procedures. So, these doctors and therapists have a lot to answer for.
Yeah, well, if you think you're behind in the United States, you should come down to Australia sometime. Kelly Jane Torrance, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining me here.